Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are undertaking a deep exploration of one of the great historical paradoxes of World War II aviation.
Yeah, definitely.
We've got this massive stack of reports, pilot notes, engineering blueprints, all focused on an aircraft that, well, it achieved something pretty unique.
It really did.
It started its career as basically the laughingstock of the sky and ended it as the absolute terror of the battlefield.
It's the ultimate story of function over form, isn't it?
Totally.
And maybe proof that in, industrial warfare, resilience and just raw power, sometimes they trump that initial flash of elegance.
Exactly. We're diving into the history of the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt.
Ah, the jug. Or, as its opposition first called it, the flying milk bottle.
That nickname. That's the central contradiction we really need to get into today, right?
Yeah.
Our mission, looking at these sources, is to trace the precise journey of this massive, bulky aircraft. How did German pilots go from, like, genuine active mockery when the P-47 first showed up over Europe in the 43,
Right,
to this kind of institutional dread, what they actually called Jabo fever by the time the war was ending?
It's a huge shift. And it was an aircraft defined by its sheer physical presence. I mean, the P-47 was enormous.
Huge.
We're talking like a round-nosed behemoth that, fully loaded, was pushing 7 tons.
7 tons. You put that next to the sleek Messerschmitts or those Focke-Wulfs.
The German designs?
It just looked, well, slow. Clumsy, even.
It did. And the sources are clear, that skepticism. It wasn't just the enemy.
No, not at all. Initially, a lot of Allied pilots found it a bit of a handful.
Heavy controls.
Yeah, and slow to climb compared to the lighter fighters. And crucially, it was thirsty. Drank fuel like crazy because it was so big engine.
So it needed a different way of flying, really. So we've got to look past those first impressions, right? We need to understand the underlying knowledge nuggets, the engineering choices, the tactics that proved everyone wrong.
Allied skeptics, German mockers, everyone.
Yeah. The P-47 had this hidden strength, almost unbreakable, that nobody really saw coming at first.
Okay, let's unpack this then. If it wasn't the most agile thing, not the fastest down low initially, where did it start to dominate? Where was its strength?
Altitude. Its strength lay way up high.
Okay.
And the key to that altitude was sustained high horsepower output, pretty much regardless of how thin the air got. Which brings us to, let's say, Section 1, the kingdom of altitude. The P-47 was basically built to thrive where other planes just couldn't breathe.
Right. Dive into the specifics for us. When we talk raw power, what was the massive heart beating inside this thing?
Okay, the heart was the legendary Pratt & Whitney R2800 double WASP engine.
Ah, the double WASP. Heard of that one.
Oh, yeah. A beast. Dual row, 18 cylinders, radial engine, known for being incredibly rugged, reliable, already proven on Navy planes, actually.
Okay.
A superb engine, pushing out over 2,000 horsepower. But the engine alone doesn't explain why the P-47 owned the sky above, say, 30,000 feet.
Right. Something else was needed for that. And that capability came from this incredibly complex system built around the engine, didn't it? The turbo-supercharger.
That's it.
The sources just keep coming back to this feature. It seems like the single most defining piece of P-47 engineering.
It absolutely is. This wasn't your simple mechanical supercharger like you found in, most other fighters.
Oh.
No, the turbo-supercharger system, it used exhaust gases, stuff that's normally just wasted, right?
Right.
It used those hot gases to spin a turbine, like a little jet engine almost. And that turbine dramatically compressed the air before it went into the engine.
Okay, so force-feeding the engine with denser air, even when the outside air is thin.
Exactly. It allowed the R2800 to basically maintain its sea-level power output way, way up in the thin air of the upper atmosphere.
That sounds brilliant, but also sounds incredibly complex to package into a single-seat fighter.
Oh, it was.
And this is where the sheer bulk, the size of the P-47, starts to make engineering sense, doesn't it?
Precisely. That complexity is why the P-47 had to be so big.
Yeah.
The sources, they detail the layout. It's kind of amazing. The ducting for all this compressed air, it had to run like 18 feet.
18 feet.
Yeah, almost the whole length of the fuselage. From the engine exhaust tucked under the cockpit floor, back to the turbine near the tail, and then all the way back forward again, going through an intercooler to cool the compressed air down.
So basically an 18-foot plumbing system inside the plane.
Pretty much.
And that whole setup needed this wide, deep, fuselage to house all the pipes, the intercooler, heat shielding.
Correct. That flying milk bottle shape everyone laughed at.
Yeah.
It was the necessary cost. It was the price you paid for engineering that high-altitude superiority. Classic form follows function.
Right. And the German designs, they just didn't have that.
Well, they mostly relied on simpler mechanical superchargers. They just inherently struggled to breathe efficiently much above, say, 25,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really have the engineering space or maybe the design priority for that kind of complex high-altitude gear.
So, okay, picture this. A German fighter's maybe peaking around 28,000 feet, struggling.
Yeah, losing power.
And the P-47 is just roaring along effortlessly at 35,000 feet, where the German plane is seriously down on horsepower. That's a huge tactical advantage.
Oh, a decisive one. We call this its pingdom, right? That high-altitude zone gave the P-47 just unmatched strength and energy management.
Energy management, meaning?
Altitude is basically banked potential energy. So when a P-47 engaged, it could trade that height for overwhelming speed in a dive. A devastating high-speed dive.
And the physics of air combat meant if the enemy tried to follow you back up into your kingdom?
They're fighting a losing battle, absolutely. The P-47 could dictate the terms of the fight.
How so?
It would dive, use its speed advantage, and these things could dive incredibly fast, near vertical speeds that would literally rip the wings off less robust planes.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah. It makes its pass, unleashes hell, and then uses that superior engine turbo system to climb right back up to 35,000 feet. It recovers its energy, its altitude, faster than the enemy could.
So the German pilot might survive the first pass?
Maybe. But he couldn't effectively stay in the fight or retaliate up there. The P-47 was fighting on its home turf.
That sustained power, way up high.
Yeah.
That was the first big surprise.
Definitely.
But, okay, even with all that altitude, if one well-aimed cannon shell brings you down, the advantage is kind of moot, isn't it?
True.
Which is why we have to talk about the plane's second defining feature.
Yeah.
Its sheer toughness, its durability and firepower.
Right. That 7-ton airframe wasn't just built big to hold the engine system. It was also built to carry a massive punch and, crucially, absorb an astonishing amount of punishment.
Which brings us to Section 2, the flying tank.
Exactly.
The sources immediately jump on the firepower hidden in that bulky shape. This wasn't about surgical strikes. This was obliteration.
Yeah, you see that philosophy right in the armament. The Thunderbolt carried 8 Browning .50 caliber machine guns. 8. 4 recessed into each of those huge wings. That number, for a standard loadout on a U.S. single-seat fighter, pretty much unprecedented at the time.
And it's not just the number of guns, is it? It's the kinetic effect when they all fire together.
Oh, absolutely. When those guns were synchronized, the combined rate of fire was over 6,400 rounds per minute.
Wow.
We're talking a concentrated stream of heavy, armor-piercing, incendiary lead, just unparalleled. And they carried a lot of ammo, 3,400 rounds total. They could sustain those bursts.
The combat reports in these sources,
Hey.
they describe the German perspective. It was like suddenly flying into a solid wall of hot metal.
Yeah.
Not, discrete hits from a smaller cannon, but brutal saturation.
Total obliteration. The .50 cal round, it had serious stopping power. It could punch through light armor, tear structures apart. German pilots who laughed at the slow climb.
Yeah.
They learned fast. Their elegant Messerschmitts could be shredded into scrap in maybe a 2-second burst from a diving Thunderbolt.
Brutal. But the really legendary status, that comes from its resilience, right? The bulkiness, the heavy skin, the things that made it sluggish at first.
Turned out to be his life insurance. That's the flying tank nickname in action.
Yeah.
This plane was designed with ruggedness as a top priority, maybe even over absolute lightness. And there's a remarkable case study in our sources, one that didn't just cement the P-47's reputation, but really changed how Allied pilots thought about surviving.
You must be talking about Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson's fight in late '43.
That's the one, famous story.
Yeah, it gets mentioned a lot, but the details of the damage, they're key to understanding just how tough this plane was. It sounds almost unbelievable.
It was horrifyingly real. Johnson's P-47 got absolutely hammered in a sustained attack, hit over 200 times.
200.
And not just rifle fire. We're talking cannon shells. They ripped through the tail, wings peppered with huge holes, canopy shattered.
Oh, my God.
Systems failing. His oxygen was gone. Oil was literally streaming onto his goggles.
And he was wounded, too, wasn't he? Bleeding.
Yeah, pilot injured as well. Logically, that plane should have just disintegrated, or at least crashed instantly.
But it didn't.
Nope. Despite catastrophic structural damage, the engine, partly protected by its radial design, remember, kept running, and the Thunderbolt, probably shaking like mad, kept flying.
Incredible.
Johnson somehow wrestled that wreck back home and landed safely. That incident just vividly demonstrated the built-in toughness, the redundancy that P-47 had.
What were the specific design things beyond just thick metal that let it take that kind of beating?
Well, it was systemic, really. It had self-sealing fuel tanks, obviously. But importantly, the control lines. The actual cables running from the stick and pedals to the flaps and rudder, often doubled up or heavily reinforced, so where maybe one cannon hit might sever the controls on a lighter plane, making it impossible to fly.
Right, you're just a passenger then.
Exactly. The P-47 could often absorb that hit and still be controllable, even if it was sluggish. Plus, the pilot sat behind that huge radial engine. It acted like a giant air-cooled shield against attacks from the front.
That knowledge, knowing your aircraft might be full of holes but still flying, that must be incredibly powerful psychologically for a pilot.
Oh, absolutely. It generates that loyalty, that trust you see reflected in the documents. That pilot trust became fundamental. The quotes from the time really say it all, like the one we found. "If I had to crash, I'd rather crash in a P-47 than land in anything else."
Wow. That's quite an endorsement.
It's an endorsement born from surviving the impossible, right?
Yeah.
It told every pilot, okay, maybe it's ugly, maybe it's heavy, but this plane will bring you home when logically nothing else should.
So, by early 1944, the P-47 has established itself. Dominant, up high, tough as nails. Yeah. But the war wasn't static, was it? The Luftwaffe was bringing out improved fighters, better interceptors. The Thunderbolt had to keep evolving to stay on top, especially at lower altitudes.
That's right. It wasn't enough just to be powerful and durable. It had to get faster, more responsive down low, too.
Okay.
Which brings us neatly to Section 3, the evolutionary monster, and how a seemingly small change, a component swap, actually transformed its performance.
The sources really highlight one specific refinement here, adopting the paddle blade propeller.
Yes. This is a classic example of, engineering optimization based on what they were learning in combat.
How did it work?
Well, with the original propeller, when the P-47 was flying really fast, the tips of the blades were moving so incredibly fast, they were actually approaching or sometimes even breaking the speed of sound.
Sonic booms off the prop tips.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
It created what's called transonic drag, these massive shock waves that drastically reduced the propeller's efficiency. It basically wasted a lot of engine power.
Especially affecting acceleration and climb rate.
Exactly, those two. So It wasn't really about adding more power, but about using the R-2800's existing power much more efficiently to create trust.
Got it. So the paddle blades.
The new paddle blade design.
Right.
The blades were wider, had a larger surface area. They could bite a much bigger chunk of air with each rotation.
Okay.
This drastically improved the overall efficiency, especially fixing those sluggish acceleration rates that the earlier P-47s were known for.
And the practical result for the pilot in the cockpit.
Transformative. The P-47 wasn't just a high-altitude predator anymore. It became a genuine all-altitude dogfighter.
Really?
Yeah. Significantly better climb rates, much faster acceleration, even a bit more top speed. The later models, like the P-47D especially, could now properly mix it up, fight toe-to-toe with the best Luftwaffe fighters like the Focke-Wulf 190D, even down low.
Without giving up its high-altitude edge.
Exactly. Best of both worlds, almost.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting psychologically.
Yeah.
Because this physical and performance evolution, it leads directly to the P-47 becoming this overwhelming psychological weapon.
Absolutely.
It stopped being just another enemy plane for the Luftwaffe and became like a symbol of their own decline.
The psychological shift is just profound when you read about it. By 44, the Luftwaffe is taking catastrophic losses. German aces, guys who had openly dismissed the flying milk bottle a year earlier, now they're dying in combat against these improved, heavily armed Thunderbolts. The mockery, completely gone, vanished.
And their dread became so widespread, so institutionalized, they actually coined a specific term for it, didn't they?
They did. While the P-47 was often used as a fighter bomber, the Germans nicknamed those Jabos.
Jabo.
Fighter bomber, okay.
The specific emotional and psychological reaction they had to them that was labeled Jabo fever.
Jabo fever. Wow, that sounds like more than just respect for the enemy. It implies like a pervasive, uncontrollable fear.
It was. Reports describe it as this instinctive panic that would just spread through the German ranks. Pilots, ground troops, everybody.
It wasn't even necessarily about the skill of the individual Allied pilot anymore. It was about the sheer, omnipresent, unmanageable threat of the P-47 itself.
Just hearing it was enough.
Apparently, yes. Just the sound of that massive radial engine, that distinctive low thunder or growl coming in low over the trees, it meant 850 cals were about to open up, or a ton of bombs was about to wipe out your position or your supply truck.
So that initial mockery was utterly replaced by this crippling dread.
Totally. It really proves the complete evolutionary success of the platform, doesn't it? The plane that looked like it shouldn't fly well ended up dominating the psychology of the battlefield.
It shows that what really matters in combat is, well, consistent performance, toughness, and the ability to adapt.
And the Thunderbolt adapted perfectly. It went from being primarily a high-altitude escort to the master of tactical air superiority, and then, ultimately, maybe its most devastating role, the round attack machine.
Yeah, that transition to ground attack is the final crushing chapter in the Thunderbolt story, isn't it?
It really is.
Its durability and that massive load-carrying capacity made it the ideal tool for just systematically destroying Germany's ability to fight on the ground.
Absolutely. By 1944, its main job really expanded beyond air combat into what the sources call logistical interdiction, wrecking the supply lines.
And it was designed from the start to be versatile, right? A rugged weapons platform.
Exactly. So how did they typically kit it out for ground attack?
Yeah, what could it carry?
Well, on top of the standard 8.50 cals, which were devastating just for strafing runs,
sure,
a single Thunderbolt could be fitted to carry a colossal external load. We're talking up to a full ton of bombs.
A ton on a fighter.
A ton. Plus, often, a rack of 10 high-velocity rockets as well.
Wow, that kind of flexibility. It means Allied commanders could target almost anything, couldn't they? Bunkers, bridges, tanks, trains.
Pretty much anything that moved or stood still that they wanted gone.
And the sources. They provide just staggering data on the results of this relentless campaign. A campaign specifically aimed at crippling Germany's ability to move troops and supplies.
The scale of the destruction is almost hard to wrap your head around. These are the knowledge nuggets that really show the war being lost on the rails and roads. And the P-47 was a huge part of that. Get this.
Okay.
They destroyed an estimated 86,000 railway cars.
86,000.
They took out 9,000 locomotives.
9,000 locomotives. Just pause on that. That's not just slowing down supplies. That's crippling a modern nation's entire transport network.
It is. No fuel for the pantsers, no spare parts for the factories, no way to effectively move troops to plug gaps in the line.
And they destroyed trucks, too.
Oh, yeah. 68,000 trucks destroyed, plus countless convoys, bridges, tanks, troop trains. You name it.
It's strategic strangulation, but carried out by a tactical fighter plane.
And the Thunderbolt was uniquely suited for that dangerous low-level work, remember?
Because it was so tough.
Exactly. Flying low means flying into heavy flak, ground fire. But the P-47's resilience, that protected engine, the heavy airframe, the redundant systems that could soak up hits that would have just annihilated sleeker, maybe liquid-cooled fighters.
And the psychological impact again. Back to Jabo fever.
Right.
The sources emphasize that P-47s became so feared on the ground. German soldiers would sometimes just abandon perfectly good vehicles, trucks, half-tracks, even trains sometimes.
Yeah, just ditch them.
The moment they heard that distinctive engine sound in the distance, they wouldn't even wait for the attack they knew was coming.
That kind of fear, it just accelerates the collapse of an army, doesn't it? Causes material loss before a shot's even fired.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the final, maybe the most crushing element that made the Thunderbolt so decisive, the sheer industrial might of the United States.
Okay, so we're shifting focus a bit now from individual combat performance to the bigger picture. Logistics, industrial capacity.
Exactly. The sources draw this really sharp contrast between American mass production philosophy and, say, German engineering priorities.
How so?
Well, German engineering, especially in aviation, often seemed focused on achieving that peak cutting-edge performance, often resulted in highly complex designs, beautiful engineering, but relatively low production numbers.
Right. Quality over quantity, maybe.
Perhaps. Whereas the American approach, and the P-47 is a prime example, prioritized strength, operational reliability, devastating firepower, and crucially, quantity, just sheer numbers.
They didn't necessarily build the absolute fanciest, most complex plane. They built the best rugged workhorse that could be churned out fast and reliably.
Exactly. And the production stats. They're the final, unanswerable argument against the Luftwaffe. Over 15,683 Thunderbolts were built.
15,683.
Yeah, mostly the later D models. They rolled off American assembly lines during the war. Germany simply couldn't hope to match that scale.
That sheer volume and attrition just worked completely against Germany, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Every German plane, every pilot lost. It was incredibly hard, often impossible to replace. Meanwhile, an Allied P-47 loss, sad for the pilot, of course, but the airframe itself could often be replaced within weeks by a brand new one ready to go with a newly trained pilot.
So the P-47 was built faster and in far greater numbers than Germany could replace its total losses, pilots and planes combined.
Pretty much, yeah. By late 44, that overwhelming quantity, coupled with the P-47's inherent qualities, it just led directly to the collapse of the Luftwaffe's ability to operate effectively. The sheer weight of numbers eventually crushes even superior individual craftsmanship if you can't replace your losses.
And the final tally. It confirms the huge dual impact this aircraft had, air-to-air and air-to-ground.
Yeah, when the war ended, P-47s were credited with destroying 3,752 enemy aircraft in aerial combat.
Still a very respectable number for a fighter.
Absolutely. But then you add to that the tens of thousands of ground targets, those trains, trucks, tanks, supply depots. It becomes crystal clear. The Thunderbolt was arguably the single greatest instrument of tactical destruction, of interdiction, in the European theater.
It really earned that nickname, didn't it? The Steel Hammer.
It certainly did.
So bringing this whole story full circle, our deep dive into these sources confirms it. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt literally turned laughter into fear.
Yep, mockery into respect.
And that early doubt, even among Allied pilots, into this enduring legend of toughness and firepower.
It was that convergence, wasn't it? Strategic innovation like the turbo-supercharged, giving it that kingdom up high.
Right.
Combined with just unprecedented ruggedness, and then layered on top of that, the ability to mass produce it on an unbelievable scale. Those were the key ingredients.
And the ultimate proof, the final word, really comes from the opposition themselves.
Yeah.
Our sources highlight that specific admission from German ace and later General of Fighters Adolf Galland. He saw the whole thing unfold from 43 to 45.
Galland's regret, written down in his memoirs after the war, it's such a powerful summary. He wrote, "We made a terrible mistake in underestimating that 7-ton fighter."
That 7-ton fighter. He admits it. They just dismissed it based on looks, initial performance.
Completely failed to grasp its potential to evolve, its incredible resilience, and maybe most importantly, the relentless industrial power behind it.
So the quote acknowledges the mistake wasn't just being outfought tactically, but a massive failure of perception about American industry and its engineering philosophy.
Exactly. And that failure of perception, it holds a pretty valuable lesson for us today, I think.
How so?
The P-47, it was never the slickest plane, right? Never the most elegant aircraft. The German designs often get those titles.
Sweet.
But it was the most reliable, the most durable, and the workhorse that could be built and deployed on an overwhelming scale.
Okay, so as always, we like to end with a provocative thought for you, the listener, to sort of chew on after this deep dive. What does the lesson of the Thunderbolt mean in your world?
Yeah, the question to ask yourself is, what important systems or tools or strategies maybe in your own professional life or even personal life, what's being similarly underestimated today? Which things maybe prioritize that rugged, reliable function, that durability, that ability to scale up over the sleek initial look, or the current marketing buzz, or maybe headline-grabbing complexity?
Is your industry or your team maybe laughing at a flying milk bottle right now? Something that looks clumsy, but is actually the unbeatable workhorse, just waiting for its moment, waiting to evolve and dominate the whole field.
Because the lesson of the P-47 seems pretty clear, doesn't it? Resilience and scale. They often crush short-term elegance in the long run. Keep an eye out for those durable giants.
Something to think about.
It's history's lesson, maybe applied to the future.
Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.